Hello YouTube and fellow secular thinking subscribers. It's time for the Nut Job of the Week award, which is the award that I'm going to be giving to the person who I believe says the most absurd things during the course of the week. This week's award, as everybody can see, goes to Glenn Beck, the anchor of Headline News. This week on his program he had on Ben Stein. Now, I'm sure as everybody knows, Stein recently released a movie in select theaters called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. And the movie basically attempts to give the biblical account of how the world was created some legitimacy. And they attempt to do so by claiming that there is an unfair bias in the scientific community against intelligent design and for Darwinian evolution. They also try to basically show how a belief in Darwinian evolution leads to a belief in eugenics and consequently some kind of warped racist worldview. Now, I'm sure as anybody who has gotten past 8th grade biology is asking themselves right now, why not just give Ben Stein the Nut Job of the Week award? He's the real nut job, not Glenn Beck. And to those people, I say you're right. I should be giving Ben Stein the award. And the only reason I'm not is because Stein is way too easy a target. And to be honest, if I were to make an in-depth video critical of his new movie and his views, I would need about an hour to do so, and I only want to spend about 5 minutes. So instead, as I said before, I'm going to go ahead and declare Glenn Beck to be the Nut Job of the Week. Now, I would not almost any time advocate dismissing a movie or a book or an article or anything really based solely on its premise. But for Expelled, I have to make an exception. Now, it may surprise everybody to learn that Ben Stein graduated from Yale in 1970 as the elected valedictorian, so far be it from me or anybody else to reject everything he says as idiotic. I mean, the guy's pretty good at knowing like random tidbits of trivial information that he showed us on his old show, Win Ben Stein's Money. But his new movie is a perfect example of the amazing potential that religion has to distort the thinking of otherwise fairly rational people. Beck gets the award, however, for giving this ridiculous movie a voice in the mainstream media. The conversation between Beck and Stein was borderline comedic. Beck talked about how Columbia University, or at least the students and the professors at Columbia University, are arrogant. And the implication was that they are arrogant because they don't believe in intelligent design, or at the very least because they don't offer a forum of debate that represents each side 50-50. Conversely, he alluded to Princeton as being balanced and smart because there are people that apparently advocate creationism on campus. Well, Mr. Beck, there is no forum for this particular debate at most universities because the debate by its nature does not merit each side 50% of the credibility. And in fact, if the criteria by which we determine which sides will be represented in the debate is credibility, then intelligent design shouldn't even be mentioned. After hearing Beck make these comments and repeatedly praise Expelled as, quote, a great movie, it was clear that Beck's ignorance regarding evolution and science was just as bad, if not worse, than Stein's. I don't know if that's possible to be worse than Stein's regarding evolution. Intelligent design is shunned by the scientific community not because they're inherently evil anti-theist heathens, or because there's a secret conspiracy against Christianity, as Stein would have you believe. It's shunned for 3 main reasons. Number 1, it's not science. It's a weak attempt at a rationalization of the biblical account of things. Number 2, there has never been a single shred of credible evidence to justify the intelligent design hypothesis that hasn't been sufficiently disproven. And number 3, believing in intelligent design, which is just a fancy term for creationism, requires disregarding an absurd amount of evidence that any rational person would say, wow, that clearly shows that evolution is correct. And it requires a belief in some things that are provably not true, such as the laughable notion that the world is only 6,000 years old, even though there are 14 proven scientific dating methods that all agree the world is 4.5 to 4.7 billion years old. So for this reason, among others I won't get into, clearly Mr. Ben Stein is a nut job. And for being completely ignorant of science and factual analysis and critical thinking, and for being irresponsible with the position of lead news anchor of Headline News, which is on a mainstream media channel, Mr. Glenn Beck, you have the distinguished honor of being the very first nut job of the week. Thanks for watching. This is Secular Talk.